Level 1. Level 1. Level 1. Level 1. Level 1. Level 1. Level 1.
Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight. Round three. Fight. Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight. Round three. Fight.